Right now, as you're listening to this, two chemicals are fighting a war inside your skull. One is melatonin, the other is cortisol. Every night around 9 p.m., melatonin floods your brain and pulls you under. Cortisol retreats. You fall asleep. But around 3 a.m., something shifts. Cortisol begins to rise, melatonin starts to fade, and for a brief, fragile moment, neither one is winning. You are suspended between sleep and wakefulness, balanced on a chemical knife's edge. That is the moment your eyes snap open. And the reason it happens is older than civilization itself. Here is what you were taught. Waking up at 3 a.m. is a problem. It is insomnia. It is stress. It is your phone, your coffee, your racing mind. Fix your sleep hygiene, they say. Take melatonin. See a doctor. But what if waking at 3 a.m. is not a malfunction? What if it is your body doing exactly what it was designed to do, and the malfunction is that you ever stopped? Your sleep is not a single block. It never was. Every night your brain cycles through stages, light sleep, deep sleep, REM, in loops that last roughly 90 minutes. Deep sleep dominates the first half of the night. By the third or fourth cycle, around 3 a.m., your sleep has become shallow. You are skimming the surface, and your brain is bathing in a rising tide of cortisol, the hormone that prepares you for alertness. At the same time, your blood sugar, which has been declining for hours as your liver burns through its glycogen reserves, hits a trough. When glucose drops too low, your body fires off cortisol and adrenaline to compensate. This is not a glitch. It is a rescue operation. Your body jolts you toward wakefulness to protect itself, and it does it at the same time, almost to the minute, every single night. But that is only the surface answer, because the deeper question is not why you wake up. It is why waking up at 3 a.m. feels so wrong. In the early 1990s, a psychiatrist named Thomas Ware at the National Institute of Mental Health in Bethesda, Maryland, ran an experiment that would quietly rewrite our understanding of human sleep. He took 7 healthy men and placed them in rooms with 14 hours of darkness every day for 4 weeks. No screens, no electric light, just the kind of night our ancestors knew. For the first few days, the men slept 11 hours straight, burning off the sleep debt of modern life. But by the 4th week, something ancient emerged. They began sleeping in 2 distinct blocks, roughly 4 hours, then a period of quiet wakefulness lasting 1 to 2 hours, then 4 hours again. First sleep, second sleep, and the gap between them was not empty. Ware measured their hormones during that midnight waking period and found elevated levels of prolactin, the same hormone released during meditation, during breastfeeding, during the deepest states of human calm. He described it as an altered state of consciousness not unlike meditation. These men were not suffering from insomnia. They had stumbled into a rhythm that humans followed for thousands of years and forgot in less than 200. Historian A. Roger Ekirch at Virginia Tech spent 16 years proving it. In his book, At Day's Close, published in 2005, he compiled over 500 references to segmented sleep. From medieval diaries, court depositions, prayer manuals, medical texts, and literature stretching back to Homer's Odyssey. The pattern was everywhere. People went to bed 2 hours after dusk, slept for about 4 hours, woke for an hour or two in the dead of night, then returned for a second sleep until morning. The French called it premier sommeil and second sommeil. The English called it first sleep and second sleep. In the quiet hours between, people prayed. They talked to their partners. A 16th century physician recommended that window as the ideal time to conceive a child. Students were advised to study after the first sleep, when the mind was sharpest. It was so ordinary that fictional characters mentioned it without explanation. Then gas lamps arrived. In 1667, Paris became the first city to light its streets using wax candles and glass lamps. Amsterdam followed 2 years later. The aristocracy, robbed of the cue to sleep, which was the disappearance of light, stayed up later. The trend trickled down. By the time Edison's incandescent bulb spread in the 1880s, the night had been conquered. A medical journal from 1829 urged parents to force children out of their first and second sleep habit, calling it an intemperance. Sleep maintenance insomnia, the clinical term for waking in the middle of the night and failing to return to sleep, first appears in medical literature at the end of the 19th century. The exact moment segmented sleep vanished from the culture is the exact moment we invented a disease to describe its ghost. And here is where it gets stranger. Because the reason your ancestors woke at 3 a.m. was not just chemical, it was strategic, and it may have kept your species alive. In 2017, anthropologist David Sampson at Duke University published a study in the Proceedings of the Royal Society B that tracked the sleep of 33 Hadza hunter-gatherers in northern Tanzania, one of the last groups on Earth still living a foraging lifestyle close to our Pleistocene ancestors. His team fitted them with wrist-worn actigraphs and monitored their activity for 20 consecutive nights. The results were startling. Out of over 13,000 one-minute observation windows across those 20 nights, there were only 18 minutes, total, in which every member of the group was asleep at the same time. 18 minutes. That is 0.13%. For 99.8% of every night, at least one person was awake. This was not insomnia. This was architecture. The old, the young, the night owls, the early risers, their different sleep schedules overlapped like tiles on a roof, ensuring the group was never unguarded. Sampson called it sentinel-like behavior. Frederick Snyder, the psychologist who first proposed the sentinel hypothesis back in 1966, had predicted it. That periodic awakenings during sleep evolved as environmental scan checks, moments when your sleeping brain momentarily surfaces to ask, "Am I safe?" In a group, staggered wakefulness means someone is always asking that question. The variation is not random. Sampson found that chronotype, whether you are a lark or an owl, co-varies with age. Older Hadza members woke earliest, the young stayed up latest. He called it the poorly sleeping grandparent hypothesis. The grandparents who slept badly kept the group alive. You carry this system in your body. The reason you wake at 3 a.m. is that your brain is executing an ancient surveillance protocol. It is surfacing between REM cycles, scanning the perimeter. In a Hadza camp, your wakefulness would have been a gift, a pair of open eyes, a guard at the gate. But you are not in a Hadza camp. You are alone in a dark room, in a silent house, with a clock on the nightstand. And the moment you see the time, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that solves problems and generates anxiety, latches on to the wakefulness and turns it into a crisis. Your amygdala, already less regulated at 3 a.m. because cortisol is spiking and your emotional circuitry is running without its usual brakes, amplifies every worry. A 2007 study by Soom-Shik Yu and Matthew Walker at UC Berkeley found that sleep disruption severs the functional connection between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala, making the emotional brain 60% more reactive. At 3 a.m., a bad email becomes a catastrophe. A minor ache becomes a terminal diagnosis. The sentinel check becomes a panic attack. The tragedy is not that you wake up. The tragedy is that you have been trained to believe something is wrong with you when you do. Over 30% of medical complaints are linked directly or indirectly to sleep, according to Russell Foster, professor of circadian neuroscience at Oxford. But most doctors still treat a consolidated 8-hour block as the only acceptable pattern. A condition that once gave you prolactin and calm and a quiet hour of prayer in the dark has become a condition that gives you a prescription. Here is what Thomas Ware's experiment revealed that almost nobody discusses. During that waking period between the first and second sleep, his subjects did not report anxiety. They did not report restlessness. They reported peace, a state of consciousness that modern life has almost entirely erased. A channel, Ware wrote, between dreams and waking life that has gradually been closed off. He believed we had lost touch with a wellspring of myth and fantasy. The word for this lost hour has no English equivalent. In Old French it was called dorveille, a portmanteau of dormir, to sleep, and veiller, to be awake. A state that is neither. A space where the unconscious and the conscious overlap. You cannot reach it with a screen in your hand. You cannot reach it in fear. You can only reach it in the dark, doing nothing, expecting nothing. Tonight, when your eyes open at 3 a.m., and they will, you will have a choice. You can check the clock. You can calculate how many hours remain until the alarm. You can spiral. Or you can lie still. You can remember that somewhere in Tanzania, a grandmother is awake at the same hour, her eyes scanning a dark tree line, keeping 30 people alive without knowing she is doing it. You can remember that for 10,000 generations, this hour belonged to you. It was your hour for prayer, for thought, for the hazy space between dreams. Your body is not broken. It is remembering something your world has tried to make you forget. The dark was never the enemy. Waking up in it was the point.